All right, so we're back. YouTube cut me off, but let's go ahead and finish this out. Um, so number three, right, in terms of these proposed stages of the Rome Bennett, in terms of the development of race, right, deciding who could be enslaved, whether or not race could be defined solely on the basis of parentage, ancestry, also religion and culture, right. These are very real concerns for them, right. Initially, early on, right, folks, they started to get it. Okay, once slavery starts rolling in, oh, okay, yeah, we enslaved the blacks. Okay, cool, but what happens, right? Um, if they become Christian, right? Because Christians don't enslave other Christians. So if they baptized, how do we deal with this? Well, they come up with this really interesting thing, and Bennett talks about it. So by all means, please check out the reading. They come up with a really interesting solution, and the solution is this: instead of Christians not enslaving other Christians, it's only Christians don't enslave Christians who were born in a Christian country or were born into the Christian religion. In other words, even though, right, Christianity by definition, right, you see the problem here in terms of their philosophical, religious, theological kind of thinking, right, is an evangelistic religion. In other words, right, and it says there in the 28th chapter of Matthew, go ye therefore in all the world, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all the things that I have taught you, right? So Christianity is an evangelistic religion, and yet they say, okay, we will evangelize, but it will have no effect on your station in life. In other words, there are those who would cling to what the Apostle Paul says. I believe it is in 1 Corinthians, where he says, whatever station that one is in when called to the gospel, that one also remain. Now, true enough, when he says that, the circumstances are a lot different, and he believes that Jesus is coming back like tomorrow. So, in other words, Paul's saying, look, there's no reason to change anything, because he's going to crack the sky tomorrow and everything going to be cool. So don't worry about trying to change anything. By the time that this stuff happened, Paul been dead for about 1600 years, folks. So using that argument just doesn't hold water. And not to say that Jesus is not coming back, but it is to say, however, that it is also about then doing right by people. And that was something that was not done. So there are real questions that they are trying to work their way through, and ultimately then they do decide this, right? They decide that, okay, if a mother is enslaved, right, parentage, boom, that then the child, the offspring, is enslaved. Oh, okay, ancestry, okay, that's when they start coming up with the laws. And also Bennett talks about this, that if there's one grandparent of a person who is black or Negro, that person would be defined as Negro. And so as a result of that, that person is able to be enslaved, right? We already talked about religion, but then also in terms of culture, which figures very prominently in terms of talking about ancestry, parentage, ethnicity, and the like. And then the last stage that Bennett outlines in terms of the development of the racial structure is the destruction of the personality of the slave or the black, right? This is done initially by declaring the slave to be the property of the master, but eventually also came to mean the exclusion of blacks from multiple power-wielding processes. In other words, right, things like voting, other types of self-determination, right, are not allowed, right? Quite simply, things like being able to read, whether or not it's legal for blacks to read and write, whether or not it's legal for blacks to own property or not. As we get further into history, into the 19th century, whether or not it is possible for free blacks to remain in particular sections of the country without fear of being either re-enslaved or enslaved for the first time, right? This is about ultimately the destruction of personality, one's ability to be and to think for him or herself, right? And so what Bennett's point is in this chapter is that race was created intentionally from the express purpose to economically empower one constructed group and disempower another, economically, politically, and socially. They tried spiritually, but were unsuccessful. So that's just to kind of go through that chapter that we will read, or that you should have read, and hopefully, if you haven't read, are reading by Lerone Bennett. I will be in here every so often posting lectures. I also hope, one of the things that I didn't say, but I did say in my message to you yesterday, that I hope that we would go live at least a couple of times in the course of this class. It allows for a good conversation, a good banter, allows, you to ask questions. And my only ask of you when we do those live sessions is, be in there with me. If I'm going to be, talking, and if I'm going to be lecturing, ask questions. If I ask a question, jump in there. Y'all know how I do it. Same thing as when we're in class. I want you guys to talk, express yourselves. If you have questions, or if you have a relevant point that needs to be made, by all means, make it. Okay. So with that all being said, I'm signing off now. And I will see you. Make sure that you get in there, get in the discussion. Make sure that you're keeping up with your readings as well as the movies. And if you need any help whatsoever, please reach out to me. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.